Welcome to 10 with Zen with your host, Helen Hoodward. Our guest today is Patrick Ottley-O'Connor, and today we're talking about wellbeing. And I want to put this in some context from some data from Education Support. Their annual survey of over 3,000 education staff in 2022 showed that over half of staff have actively sought to change or leave their current jobs, citing workload as a main factor. And 59% have considered leaving the sector in the past academic year due to pressures on their mental health and wellbeing. So Patrick, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
Patrick, you've been the head of 2 schools and an exec head of schools needing support for over 18 years and a total of 35 years, therefore, in the classroom. You're based in Rochdale and you and Mel have 5 boys between you. So you've had a busy work life and a large family to look after. And I know you're a wellbeing advocate, a supermodel, as you like to call yourself. So why is wellbeing really important to you?
I love my job, and I've been blessed with a great career. I've really enjoyed my time in education, and I think a big part of that is I had some good coaching when I was younger, and some good mentors younger who talked about this thing called wellbeing. Long before we started talking about well-being, I think it felt a bit of a soft option in times gone by, and you didn't talk about mental health at all.
Yeah. Until
maybe 10 years ago, we've started talking really about mental health. But I managed to get myself into some really good habits around the things that we do, and actually the tongue-in-cheek phrase about being a well-being supermodel I use it is for effect because it puts a smile on people's faces. But
of course,
but there's some truth behind it in that if we believe that everyday habits become the culture that we want within our schools and a culture of care and mental health and well-being, then if I want my staff to look after themselves and look after each other so it can make the biggest difference to the children, I must model that. And actually self-care, self-love is not selfish. And actually there's within education, because we serve people, we look after the children, and actually that can quite often be people will sacrifice their own mental health and well-being as a result of that. So for me, it's an absolute top priority that we do look after ourselves so we can actually then look after and look out for each other so we can make the biggest difference to the children. If you like the old oxygen mask analogy, put your own mask on before helping others. It feels counterintuitive, but actually research suggests it makes us more productive and actually happier. And actually I've enjoyed a long and sustainable career, and that's the thing. I quite often talk to young teachers on the part of the degree courses about how to create a long sustainable career, and I use that look after yourself first before helping others so we can make the biggest difference. I work with head teachers and executive teachers and CEOs about coaching, use exactly the same line. I think it's just that important.
You're clearly somebody who takes care of yourself, and I know your own fitness is really important to you. You're very aware that once you're in that position, you're in a much better situation to be caring for others. But there's also that really important point about leaders modelling to other people. And it's almost through that modelling that we give other people permission to take care of their own well-being and mental health. So there's 3 really important things in there.
There's also a very big point there as a male, as a man, and one of the things with that, as a white, straight, non-disabled man, and we tend to rule the world. I do things around trying to break that within diversity, equity and inclusion. But many men struggle with this. There's a very toxic masculinity around as well. So the modelling is just not about well-being, it's about well-being, a more progressive version of masculinity in terms of the way we care for ourselves, modelling vulnerability, being able to talk openly about when we need help and support, not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign of strength. That's part of that definition for me.
Yeah, that's really helpful to hear. And you're right, because 20 years ago, we weren't talking about this. We weren't talking about well-being. Certainly the issues that you're talking about now, about how men feel they can self-care, they just weren't on the table, really. So what are the everyday practices that we can all include that help us have regular well-being habits that you would advocate?
Okay, I'm going to talk just one specific methodology I use every day. A head teacher called Martin Rea, who works down in the south, he introduced or coined the term Teacher 5 a day for me. It comes from the NHS 5 ways to well-being, and I'll go through those to not to patronise or patronize, as Melanie calls it, but to take you through those processes. And the 5 things are, the idea is if we do at least one of these a day, we're doing something to care for ourselves. So exercise is an obvious one. If we exercise, that's good for us. And that just may be taking the stairs rather than the lift. It may be wearing your smartwatch and doing your 10,000 steps or whatever it is you do. Or it could be those regular workouts that get your heart rate up, which are more beneficial. Number one is making sure we build those regularly into our weekly routine so they become habitual. Noticing the things around us. This was probably the one I really struggled with the most as a younger leader, in that I always thought mindfulness was a little bit tree huggery or whatever word you want to use, and I didn't get that idea. But now I've bought into it. Things like in autumn when the leaves are falling off, when the leaves are a beautiful colour, I've noticed them changing, and there's a wind forecast for the weekend, I'll put a tweet out saying, if you've not looked at the trees, look now or you're going to miss it. And there's so many people that have just had their head down in the car in the dark and missed it. And we do that with our children growing up. We go to swimming lessons and mark on our knees. We for whatever activity you do in those things. One of my biggest tools I use about, and people tend to know me on Twitter for, is my Tortoise hurricane. Now, pets are great because you can just sit and just notice a pet. So me coming home, getting out of my suit, putting shorts or jeans on and just going laying down in the garden with Hurricane when he's not hibernating. It's just so nice for me just to watch and relax and empty my brain. 1, 2, 3 minutes. It doesn't take a long time to do that. So the mindfulness and noticing things. The next one I would say is learning something new. The small things every day. Every day is a school day, as we talk about in our house. We're always trying to learn something new, and that keeps us alive and it looks after our well-being. Staying connected, isolation being one of the biggest issues that we face in mental health issues, but staying connected, and that's building your own personal and professional learning networks, however you do that, really important. And finally, volunteering and supporting others. Me talking to you today, I'm giving something, it's good for my well-being, so thank you very much. Now, each one of those, I do a tweet 365 days a year, at least one tweet a day, which shows where I've done something to support my mental health and well-being. So today, it might very well be this conversation, #volunteer, teacher 5 a day, that I talk about. So that's the modelling it as well. I'm showing other leaders this is what I do, as well as making me look after myself as well. So some very, very simple, everyday, small, practical things. It sometimes takes a big decision and then those small steps to make it happen. I don't know if that's enough detail for you.
Plenty of detail. It's great because there's a really clear framework there that you've talked about. We really love the 5 ways to wellbeing. That's something that we've talked about a lot at Zen, and we've posted about it, and we've got some lovely infographics that one of our team has done. So that's really helpful, Patrick. Thank you. So let me ask you, you've been a successful head teacher, but there must have been some tough times. I know you love your job and I see it in your face when we talk, but there must have been some really tough times. So what helped you through the tough times?
I've had some absolute nightmares and made some humdingers of mistakes along the way, as you do, because we all do as we go forwards.
Of course.
I do like I like bringing order to chaos. That's just where I like to place myself. But that does put stresses on us. And for me, anchoring myself in my 5 ways to well-being, anchoring myself, and that includes my family, that includes my friends, it includes the hobbies and things that I have, making sure I have those things planned in as well. We wouldn't dream of starting a new term and not have a plan for what we're going to teach. Yet we arrive at holidays quite often without a plan of what we're going to do. Even if that plan is, I'm doing nothing. The plan is not to have a plan. For me, we quite often, the old adage of you fail to plan and you plan to fail. I think what's helped me is putting those things in place and actually not putting my oxygen mask on when things are going bad, but actually putting my oxygen mask on every day, going through that routine and that drill. So when I need it, I know I can do that. And if I know I've got a particularly tough time coming, have those things put in place. Because of course the Ofsted call comes in. You deal with that. But there are certain things I do during that period of time that will support me to be able to do my job well. Or we suck those things up for that short period of time. It's a sustained periods of time of pressure. If we're not looking after ourselves, that the problems really come. Okay,
that's really interesting. So it's actually the practice and the regular practice that supports you and sustains you through those difficult times.
It's a culture of care. It's a culture of self-care. Everyday habits create culture.
Nice. I'm going to go for a bonus question today because I feel I know you well enough to do that, Patrick.
Go for it.
Supposing we were talking with somebody, supposing somebody was listening who just knew right now that they, perhaps they haven't even got to the place where they can call it burnout, but actually, their heart races, they're not sleeping well at night because they're spinning through their head everything that's happened, what they're going to do tomorrow, when they're actually not in a great space and they're kind of going, well, I just haven't got time to do those things. Where can they start?
First of all, well done for recognising you're in trouble, because we quite often are in that boiling pot and don't recognise that we're in trouble, and we start to melt down and burn out. So well done. I would say in headship, there are a variety of wonderful organisations out there doing things. The organisations that you're involved with through Head Teacher Chat and through Zen, etc. An organisation we set up called Heads Up for Head Teachers, which was really, I'm paraphrasing what it was done for now, I suppose, but for those who are falling off or being pushed off that leadership cliff, where they can reach out to a confidential space. Headrest is another great organisation that does it.
Yeah.
You talked about education support and that wonderful piece of their teacher wellbeing index that's just been published at the moment. The confidential support that's in there is reach out and speak to somebody. There are many people that we can speak to that do it for their own wellbeing. #volunteer. We put ourselves, and there are many people who pay back in that way, are able to do so at a variety of levels. And starting that conversation just to unpick where you are and see where you are, that sometimes means people need to step off for a period of time. Sometimes just being connected and going and realizing they're not on their own is enough to continue putting those things into people's routines. I'd recommend everybody as a coach proactively. So again, we talk about the person who's at that position. Reach out, it's not too late. But actually, as soon as you realize, somebody's listening to this now and thinking, well, actually, I have been feeling a bit stressed. I have been feeling a bit. We're talking a bit. Reach out then. Don't wait until it gets to the burnout, the stitching time, as my mum says. I'll explain for the younger viewers. If we recognise at stitch 1 or 2 and start a conversation, it's easier to get help. But if you wait until stitch 9 when things are ripped and torn and broken and you're at despair, there's still things we can do to support, to help, to go. So I think it's seeing it and owning it and being part of the solution is absolutely what we should do.
Okay, that's really helpful. And you've mentioned 3 really useful organisations there: Heads Up for Headship, Headrest, actually for Head Teacher Chat, and also Education Support. So they're all offering support to head teachers. And absolutely, it starts with recognising and reaching out for some help. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today on 10 with Zen. It's been brilliant to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great to be here. And I said, great for my well-being as well.
That's lovely. Thank you. For our listeners, thank you all for joining us again on 10 with Zen.
10 with Zen is brought to you by Zen Educate. Zen Educate's online platform puts you in control of supply and recruitment. To receive 50% off your first day booked with Zen, just DM us on Twitter @ZenEducate and quote 10 with Zen. Thanks for listening.